Yeah, you can hear me?
Yeah, you like kind of low though.
Yeah, hello?
You hear me?
Shoot.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, yeah,
It's like low. It's low for some reason.
yeah. Then I don't know what you did, but I can hear you loud and clear now. Yeah, then I'm gonna go ahead and get started.
All right.
So I want to welcome everybody to Oklahoma City King James Bible University. Then I'm Deacon Micah, and also with Deacon Smith. And today, then we have a special teaching. It's titled "So Trick or Treat or Truth." So today, while the rest of the world that is still in darkness, they're trick-or-treating right now, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to do truth instead of the former two. And the reason why is that many of us in times past, or currently are, then if you're not in the truth, have taken part of this holistic, heathenistic holiday. So activities, and it can range from haunted houses to neighborhood trick-or-treating, or even attending parties that are themed after this Halloween, and not having any sort of knowledge that when you participate in these sorts of activities, then you are taking part in something, a feast day that has not been ordained by the Most High God of Israel. Now all you have to do is just look at Leviticus, or you can look at Numbers, and you can even look in Deuteronomy and Exodus, where then it talks about the days that he's ordained for us to proclaim and to publish and to make public notice. And this Halloween, then it's not one of them. So what we're doing is we're preparing a documentary which will look into the origins of this Christianized feast day. Because many people, then they don't know that Halloween, then it's a Christianized version of a Celtic fire festival called Samhain. But the Christians, they don't understand that you cannot make a clean thing from an unclean. So we're looking into the origins of this festival to give you the truth surrounding this holiday. And what we're going to be doing is as we're digging into the origins and the histories of this Samhain, then we will be running precepts with the King James 1611. So without further ado, then we're going to look at our first site, and this is brought to us by history.com. So just looking at Samhain, and this is what we'll pick up and begin at. So Samhain is a pagan religious festival originating from ancient Celtic spiritual tradition. So in modern times, Samhain is usually celebrated from October 31st to November 1st to welcome in the harvest and usher in the dark half of the year. And celebrants believe that during this time, this transitioning from the lighter half to the darker half of the year, the barriers and the seals between the living world and the world of the dead, they believe that it would be at its thinnest to the point where these spirits that have already departed, that the dead, then they could return back into the world of the living and interact with the folks that are living during that time. So what's going on is we will cross over here and understand that the Celtic, their calendar, then it observed 2 seasons. So you have the summertime and you got winter. So the summertime, then it's that lighter half of the year where the earth is yielding forth the increase. So you're gathering in the crops and you're doing your harvest and you're collecting and storing up all of your food before the winter hits. Because when the winter hits, then it's that darker half of the year where the increase, all of the foods and crops that's harvesting, then you won't be able to do it. Then it's too late during this later half of the year. So before we actually move forward, then I do want to take this opportunity to show some precepts. So what we'll do is we will head to the book of Psalms, and we will look at chapter 74, and we'll pick it up at verse 17. So thou hast set all the borders of the earth. Thou hast made summer and winter. So that's that first season and that second season. And this has been sitting in our Bible all of this time. Today we recognize, at least over here in the United States, 4 seasons. So they look at spring, summer, fall, and winter, but scriptures is telling you that Spirit of God has made summer and winter. So what we'll do is we'll pick up and build on these precepts, and we'll look at Proverbs chapter 6, and we'll look at verse 6 through 8. So here it is. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, so this lazy, slothful person, and consider her ways, so you learn from this ant, and be wise. Because you can get wisdom surely through learning of the creations that the Most High God created. Then all of his creations, and they are programmed and they are set in their ways, and when you study them and consider them long enough to where you can trace precepts to these creations that he's made, then you can gather knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Then this is the point of looking at these creations that he's put out here. And even the ant, from things as small as the ant all the way up to the sun. So go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provided her meat in the summer, so getting that knowledge, and gathereth her food, so her fruits and these good works in the harvest. So these ants in there pitting in they work before the winter rolls in. So what we'll do is we'll leave this and we'll go to chapter 20 and we'll look at verse 4. So the sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold. Therefore shall he beg in harvest and have nothing, because then you wasn't laboring during the correct season. And what happens is you'll be begging spiritually, then you hadn't gathered in your knowledge, your understanding. So now then you'll be dependent on the doctrine of somebody else, another man's doctrine, fleshly, carnal doctrine. So what we'll do is now we'll go to the book of Sirach. And we will look at chapter 40, and we'll look at verse 28 and 29. Alright, so I'm going to pull up this other one since this one glitched. And here we are. So picking it up at verse 28. So my son, my servant, lead not a beggar's life. And this is those sluggards that are not going to do any work during the summer, and then they'll let the harvest pass right by them. For better is it to die than to beg. Reason why? The life of him that dependeth on another man's table is not to be counted for a life. That's a full thought. Because he polluted himself with other man's meat. Then you didn't take that opportunity to gather your meat during the summer when the earth was yielding forth for increase. Now you're dependent on his fleshly meat. But a wise man, well nurtured, will be aware thereof. So all of these things, then it's spiritual when you're going back looking at these two seasons. So you have summer and winter, and going back into the history of the Samhain, during the transitioning phase from the summer season to the winter season, they would reference this transition with a fire festival, which during its fire festival, they would offer prayers and they would do burnt offerings and sacrifices to these deities, these also known as these alleged spirits that they believe would return back to the earth during that time. So we'll pull up another source, and we will now looking at time.com. Actually, before we get there, we'll go to our source, and this is still on history.com, that is. So excuse me, I got ahead of myself. So ancient Celts marked Samhain as the most significant of the 4 quarterly fire festivals taking place at the midpoint between a fall equinox and a winter solstice. And during this time of the year, these fireplace fires in family homes were left to burn out while the harvest was gathered. And after the harvest work was complete, celebrants joined with Druid priests to light a community fire using a wheel that would cause friction and spark flames. And the wheel was considered a representation of the sun. So we have a problem right there. Got sun worship and used along with prayers. And cattle were sacrificed, and participants took a flame from the communal bonfire back to their home to relight the hearth. So there's more that goes along with this right here, and that's where we was going to look at what time.com has. But before we go there, then we just want to stop and look at this representation of the sun. So just as with the ant, where it's there for you to learn from, it's the same thing with the sun. And it was in no shape, form, or fashion created for us to be worshiping this as a god or a ruler. Then it has a lesson for us to learn and to consider when we look at the sun. But this is another thing that's one of the roots and elements of the Samhain, which now the Christianized version, what we call Halloween. So what we'll do is we'll run some precepts that I had prepared for this sun. So the first thing that we'll look at is Isaiah chapter 42 and verse 8. So I am the Spirit of God. That is my name, and my glory will I not give to another, neither my praise to graven images. So Spirit of God is making it clear and very direct that he's not going to give his glory to another. So when you consider the sun or the moon or any of the hosts of heaven or anything that's beneath the earth, and you start to worship these things, it becomes idolatry, and it's a problem. Because all of these things that he created was for us to learn from, which we'll see in Genesis chapter 9, verse 3 through 4, and Romans 1 and 20. So every moving thing that liveth shall be bread, knowledge, meat for you. It's a full thought, and we'll cut it off right there. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall you not eat, learn. So flesh and blood, then you don't consider the ways of flesh and blood. But everything that liveth, it shall be meat for you. So it's for your learning. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, his eternal power and Godhead. It's a full thought. So what it's letting us know is that the Most High, then he can be learnt. His ways can be understood by all of the things that he's created for us. So these Christians and atheists and any other parties and factions that hold to a belief that God doesn't exist, they don't have an excuse, because everything that he's created in front of us, it has lessons for us to learn. And you can see the evidence of God's existence through all of the things that he's created, even the sun. So we'll look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 16 through 18. So when God made 2 great lights, so we got 2 knowledges up there. So he has a plumb line set. And God made 2 great lights, so 2 knowledges. The greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. So family, we have the greater light, which is that sun. Then when it comes up, for the most part, then it outshine the moon. Now, depending on certain times of the day and certain seasons, then you can still view the moon when the sun is up. And I know I reside in Oklahoma City, and there are times throughout the day where the sun can be up and I can still see the moon. But there are mostly other times where when the sun is up, then you can't see the moon, you can't see the stars, because the sun is going to outshine them. Then it's a greater light. Then when the sun comes up, it gives light upon the earth, and you can see with your eyes, and it guides you through your day. And then we have the lesser light, which is the moon, which the light that comes from the moon, it's not bright enough to guide you through the night. Then this is for that very reason why we have porch lights, why there's street lights, and for people that travel, they're out and about on the roads and highways at night, you have high beams and you have headlamps to help assist you through the night. Because otherwise, and if we had to just rely on the moon's light, then you would not know where you would be going. Then you'd be groping. And if there were any sorts of hazards out there, then you wouldn't be able to see them because the moon, then it's a lesser light. So, going back to verse 17, and God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light, so knowledge, doctrine upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So when you consider these two lights, one is going to rule over you, then it's either going to be the sun, which then it rules over the light, or the moon, which rules over the darkness. When the sun is up, then you can see. When the moon is out, then if you don't have those artificial light sources to assist you out there during that time of darkness, then you won't be able to see. These are the things that you consider when you look at the sun and the moon. They're there for you to learn from, not to worship them. So we'll look at Sirach chapter 39, verse 29. For the good are good things created from the beginning, so evil things for sinners. Then it's a plumb line. Then we know that God, when you go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 4, then he separated the light from the darkness, and he saw the light that it was good. So this is what we need to consider, the deeper spiritual side. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, to go by day and night. This light, then it's going to lead you. When thou goest, it shall lead thee. When thou sleepest, it shall keep thee. And when thou awakest, it shall talk with thee. For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light, and reproofs of instruction are the way of life. So that was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. That's what the true light is, and it's his knowledge, his wisdom, and understanding. So what we'll do is we'll also hit Wisdom of Solomon chapter 13, verse 1 and 2. So surely vain are all men by nature, who are ignorant of God, and cannot out of the good things that are seen know him that is. All of his creations that he's created, you are to consider them and understand the Most High's ways. Neither by considering the works did they acknowledge the work master. It's a full thought. But because of how vain we are, deemed either fire, which we'll stop right there and just remember the Celtics, and they have these fire festivals. So they're doing these burnt offerings, these prayers. Their mechanism to get the sparks and the flames to light these hearths and to do their bonfires, that wheel, it represents the sun, or wind, or the swift air, or the circle of the stars, or the violent water, or the lights of heaven, to be the gods which govern the world, which the Most High, then he's already told us there's no God beside him. Then he's the only one, and not only that, he's not going to give his praise to anything else. So that's what I wanted to unpack with this representation of the sun. So we already know with the Samhain that there's idolatry that's tied into this festival. And this is what Christianity won't reveal with their Christianized version of Halloween. There's a degree of idolatry going on. Now, we'll look at these cattle that were sacrificed and why they were doing them. So what we'll do is we will go to time.com, and this is why. So, to appease deities during this time, sacrifices, so generally of crops and animals, were burnt in bonfires as a protective measure from evil otherworldly beings, and offerings were left out for other visitors visiting mischievous spirits. So these Celts, and they took these alleged spirits that they believed could return during that shift from summer to winter, these spirits, returning spirits, to be deities, and out of fear, so desire to try and save their fleshly lives, they would present these offerings. So the crops, if you want to look at this spiritually, they're presenting their knowledge, their increase, and not only that, presenting their bodies as sacrifices. So this becomes idolatry. And not only that, they would leave these offerings outside the doors of their homes to try and keep these spirits from entering into the homes and causing problems, which we look at how this is done with the Christians' version of Halloween, with the candy, with the treats. So what we'll do is we will put this in our remembrance. So Exodus chapter 22 in verse 20. So he that sacrifices unto any god, except unto the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed. We have to keep that in mind. We know that the Celtics, they brought forth their crops. They killed cattle to sacrifice to these these deities that they believed would return during that time. And this is idolatry. And not only that, we have to uncover this thing about them believing that these spirits could return back to the earth. So we'll look at Psalms chapter 78 verse 39, Job 14 and 12, and Wisdom of Solomon chapter 2 verse 4 through 5. For he remembered that they were but flesh. We are mortal beings, we're flesh and blood in these mortal bodies. A wind that passeth away and cometh not again. So man lieth down and riseth not, till the heavens be no more. They shall not awake, nor be raised out of their sleep. And our name shall be forgotten in time, and no man shall have our works in remembrance, and our life shall pass away as the trace of a cloud. So comparing as a trace of a cloud, and shall be dispersed as a mist that is driven away with the beams of the sun, and overcome with the heat thereof. So he's gave us two similitudes right there of how our life, then it just comes and goes. For our time is a very shadow that passeth away, and after our end there is no returning, for it is fast sealed, so that no man cometh again. So this was in vain, just an error and falsehood that these Celtics, then they would offer these offerings to these believed alleged spirits that would return. So the scriptures tells us that when your time is done, you're not going to be awakened out of your sleep. Then, so that seal that they're believing where the dead could cross back over into the world of the living, then you can't find any scriptures to support that. But this is all tied into Psalm 1, which today we call Halloween. So we'll now head over to our next source, and this is worldhistory.org, and we would look at where this whole custom of the mask came from. So in order to deceive the spirits, people darkened their faces with ashes from the bonfires, and this developed into wearing masks. And we have more. So a living person would recognize the spirit of a loved one and could then reveal themselves, but otherwise remain safe from the unwanted attention of darker forces. So this is what this looks like. Then they would take ashes from the bonfires and they would cover their faces from that. And this is what it's called guising. And they did this out of fear of being recognized by spirits. And not only that, if in any chance they may have harmed or done somebody wrong in times past, out of fear of being recognized, this is what they would do. So they did this out of fear. But what we need to look at is how that translate into modern times today. So, you have adults participating in Halloween as well as children. Then you dress them up and you have them, to appear as either Frankenstein or the mummy or demons, devils, witches, and other sorts alike, goblins, fairies, elves, and not knowing that regardless of what the Christians say, oh, well, this is just, it's innocent and it's just family fun and it's community fun. You cannot bring a clean thing out of an unclean. Job chapter 14 verse 4 tells us that. Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean? Not one. So he that sacrifices unto any god, so this is once again Exodus 22:20, except unto the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed. And the reason why we're revisiting this verse again is when you dress up in these costumes and you're out there, out and about, collecting these treats or these offerings, then you are putting yourself in a position as one of these false gods, these deities, and you're partaking in idolatry, and the person that's putting the candy in your basket, your plate, your collection plate, they're participating in this idolatry as well, which that'll run us right to Galatians 5:19-21. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these. So we got adultery, fornication, uncleanness, there's idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have told you in times past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. And this is one of those heavy-hitting reasons, along with everything else that we had just seen, why you need to refrain from this Halloween. And you don't want to get caught up with this idolatry. And in addition to the idolatry that goes on, we have to also consider the divination that would occur during these times. So this right here, then this is being provided by History.com. So the Celts thought that the presence of the otherworldly spirits made it easier for the Druids or Celtic priests to make predictions about the future, because they believed that you can just access these spirits, these at least returning spirits, and after satisfying them with an offering or a sacrifice, and you can access information about the future. So just line divination. For people entirely dependent on the volatile natural world, these prophecies were an important source of comfort during the long, dark winter. So then you get those smooth soothsayings during that dark, cold winter. To commemorate the event, Druids built huge sacred bonfires where the people gathered to burn crops and animals as sacrifices to the Celtic deities. So we had just seen that earlier. And during the celebration, the Celts wore costumes, typically consisting of animal heads and skins, and attempted to tell each other's fortunes. Key part, attempted. Because lying divinations, then they don't profit you. But this is what they would do, which we know in our scriptures, divination, then it's one of the abominations of the Spirit of God. But we are very quick to dress up as magicians and sorcerers and even put on witch costumes. So we'll also look at Britannica.com. It was in those ways that beings such as witches, hobo-goblins, fairies, and demons came to be associated with the day. The period was also thought to be favorable for divination on matters such as marriage, health, and death. So this is what also occurred during that Samhain festival. So along with prayers and burnt offerings and sacrifices, divinations. So we will open back up the preceptor and we will cut this one down, this box. Let it bear for a minute, and it's and we will pull up another box. So we'll pick it up with Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 9. So when thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter pass through the fire. So not making them pass through the fire to Moloch or any other idol, or that uses divination, which that's exactly what we had just got through looking at, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a consulter, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Spirit of God. This is the reason why he's telling us not to let nobody be found among us doing these things. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God doeth drive them out from thee. And just the same way that he did in times past, it'll be at the very end. You just look at Revelations 22 and 15. There won't be no sorcerers going into the kingdom. Thou shalt be perfect with the Lord thy God, which it's not going to be possible to do in that if you're giving your heart over to believe these lying divinations and these deceits that'll turn you out of the way. For these nations which thou shalt possess hearken unto observers of times and unto diviners, but as for thee, the Lord thy God has not suffered thee to do so. Nope, he is going to raise up a prophet from among our brethren, and that prophet is going to be speaking the words of God, because the Most High is going to put his doctrine in his mouth. That prophet is going to eat the entire roll. So we'll pick it up with some more precepts in Jeremiah. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, hearken not unto the words of the prophets that prophesy unto you. So these false prophets doing the divination, they make you vain. They speak a vision of their own heart and not out of the mouth of the Lord. Which Jeremiah 17 and 9, it tells you, the heart is desperately wicked and deceitful, and who can know it? But this is where the imaginations of these divinations come from, out of the wickedness of their own heart. They say still unto them that despise me, the Lord has said, you shall have peace. So the people that are doing contrary, these lying diviners, these false prophets, they tell them you shall have peace. And when you tell people that are already walking in the counsel of their own heart that they're going to have peace, you're strengthening those evildoers to walk further even more. This is why the Most High has that problem with these diviners and these people that do divinations and these enchanters and these witches. And they say unto everyone that walketh after the imagination of his own heart, no evil shall come upon you. Remember, I am against them that prophesy false dreams, saith the Spirit of God, and do tell them, and cause my people to err by their lies and by their lightness. So he's explaining himself. Yet I sent them not, nor commanded them. Therefore they shall not profit this people at all, saith the Spirit of God. And this is what we have to consider. The Christians, they've tried to Christianize, to wash this holiday clean, but you cannot bring forth a clean thing from an unclean. And during the Samhain festival, this Summer's End festival that they would participate in, you see the level and magnitude of the idolatry that's going on, and also the divination. And this is what Halloween, it originates from. And there's no sort of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding taking place during this Halloween. So before then I end up passing this over to Deacon Smith, then I'm going to run some precepts to show you how the Most High, then his holidays that he's ordained, it contrasts from these carnal, devilish, earthly, natural, sensual holidays that we have today, just to show you the degree of contrast. So now we are in the precept written communication tool, and we are in here to look at Leviticus. So we're in chapter 23. So picking up at verse 1 right here where my mouse is at. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel. So Moses, and he just received a commandment, and say unto them, The feasts of the Lord. These are my feasts, which in the next few verses, then he's going to proclaim the feasts that are his. And we need to understand, actually, before we even look at why it's important for us to understand these feasts that he's proclaiming, let's go back to verse 2. So speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, The feasts of the Lord. These are my feasts. See how he says my, then he's taken ownership, possession of these feasts, then he's the agency behind these. These are his. So what we'll look at is we'll first understand why then it's important for us to consider the importance of that agency, my feast. So what we'll do is we'll pull up Leviticus, and we will go to chapter 10, and we will look at verse 10, which this thing, then it went over, then we'll bring it back. And here we go. Leviticus 10 and 10. That you may put difference between holy and unholy, and between unclean and clean. Because the Most High, then his feast days, then you're going to be presenting your body as a living sacrifice. Not only that, you're going to be feasting on the Lord's Supper. So you're going to be learning his knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So eating that unleavened bread, so drinking that wine, spiritually speaking, that is. So what we'll do is we'll run another precept, and we will go to Genesis chapter 26 and look at verse 30 to build on to this. So, and he made them a feast, and they did eat and drink. So meaning what? We'll now hit Sirach. And we will go to chapter 15, if it'll let us take that. And we have verse 3. With the bread of understanding shall she feed him, and give him the water of wisdom to drink. So this is what occurs during his feast days. Then you're going to be learning. Then it's about knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And it's about the purification of your temple. We'll also pull up another precept, and we will go to the book of Amos, and we'll look at chapter 5, verse 32. Actually, excuse me, that's verse 21. Amos chapter 5, verse 21. Don't know why that was written incorrectly in my notes. So, I despise your feast days, and I will not smell in your solemn assemblies. So, our set apart convocations, then he's not going to be there. Then he's against our feast days, because our feast days are not like his feast days. So we'll run another precept, then we will go to the book of Mark, and we will go to chapter 7, verse 8 and 9. So picking it up at verse 7. So howbeit, in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of God, you hold to the tradition of men. And this is what we do when we not consider his feast days, and we're not even doing none of his feast days, and we're just doing all of the world's feast days. For laying aside the commandment of God, you hold to the tradition of men, as the washing of pots and cups, and many other such like things you do, like Halloween, like Christmas, like Easter, like Valentine's Day. And he said unto them, full well you reject the commandment of God, that you may keep your own tradition. So, when we knew God, then we glorified him not as God, but became vain in our imaginations. Then we went aside to establish our own righteousness, which our righteousness, we know that it's nothing but filthy rags. So what we'll do is we're now back in the precept written communication tool. So we see the degree of difference that the Most High, his feast days, it's about learning. Then it's about purifying your temple. It's about presenting a sacrifice. It's different from what we do carnally, centrally in this world. Just what we had seen in Leviticus chapter 10, verse 10 and 11, that we may pit difference between holy and unholy, and from between clean and unclean. So we're going to look at verse 23. So now my mouse is on the right hand side. So 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh is the Sabbath of rest. And look how he's elaborating on this. And holy convocation. So this is one of his holy ceremonies, one of his holy assemblies. You shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. So right here in this line right here, it is the Sabbath of the Spirit of God. So he's the agency of this feast day. So the same way in verse 2 of Leviticus chapter 23, verse 2, the feast of the Lord, these are my feasts. You look at verse 3, it is the Sabbath of the Spirit of God in all your dwellings. And he's taken ownership of this Sabbath, and this is one of his holidays that a lot of us, we don't consider. This is one of his days, and it comes every week, and we can celebrate in this one, but we love to party in man's traditions. So what we'll look at is we'll go to Exodus, and we will look at chapter 23 and verse 12 and just run some precepts to see the spiritual side of this Sabbath. Gotta take this down. So Exodus chapter 23 verse 12. So 6 days thou shalt do thy work, and on the 7th day thou shalt rest. Reason why, that thine ox and thine ass may have rest, and the son of thine handmaid and the stranger may be refreshed. Which, leaving this precept, and we're going to head on over to Matthew, and we'll go to chapter 11 and verse 29. So Matthew 11 and 29. And we'll also extend into verse 30. So take my yoke upon you, my spirit, and learn of me. Full thought. For I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So when we consider the Sabbath day and you look at it carnally, you're working, doing your work, those 6 days you're laboring. And on the Sabbath, it's a day of rest and refreshing. Carnally, then you do that from retiring, ceasing from your work. When you look at this spiritually, how do you make your weary soul inwardly to be at rest? Then you do that by resting in the knowledge of God. So this is what you're doing on that Sabbath, and you're refreshing in the knowledge of God. We'll run another precept just to establish this, to validate what I'm saying. So we will go to Isaiah chapter 28 and verse 12. To whom he said, this is the rest wherewith you may cause the weary to rest. And this is the refreshing. So it's the same thing that he was telling us in Exodus 23 and 12. That on the 7th day you shall rest. So it'll be a refreshing. So that you, your ox, your ass, then your handmaids, and they can all have rest and be refreshed. To whom he said, this is the rest wherewith you may cause the weary to rest. And this is the refreshing, yet they would not hear. What is this rest? You go to Isaiah chapter 28, verse 10. For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little. So what we'll do is we will run another precept, so we'll also pull one from Sirach, so we'll have precepts from all different sections that is talking about this rest, spiritually speaking. So we will go to the book of Sirach, and we will hit chapter 31, which this one will just come back to this other side. And we will go to Sirach chapter 31, verse 20. And here we are. And we'll also extend into verse 21. So sound sleep cometh of moderate eating. He riseth early, and his wits are with him. So that moderate eating, that's moderate learning. He riseth early, and his wits are with him. But the pain of watching and choler, so madness, and pains of the belly, the sickness, are with an unstable man. So a glutton, a man that's greedy upon all sorts of diverse and strange doctrines, all sorts of meats. When the scriptures tells us to seek ye out the book of the Lord and read, none shall want his mate, for his mouth is commanded, and its spirit hath gathered them, and none of those books are going to fail. If thou hast been forced to eat, so learning any other sorts of strange and diverse doctrines, arise, go forth, vomit, and once you've purged out that unclean doctrine, thou shalt have rest. Because we'll go back to Matthew 11 and 29. Said, take my yoke upon you and learn of me, and you shall have rest unto your souls when you're resting in the knowledge of God. Then this is that spiritual aspect of that Sabbath. This is what that holy day is about. And we will go to Sirach. Not Sirach. we will go to Exodus, that is, not Sirach. We're in Exodus, and we will go to chapter 35, and we will look at verse 2. So 6 days shall work be done, but on the 7th day there shall be to you a holy day. You see that right there? This is a holy day. Sabbath, not Halloween, not Christmas, not Thanksgiving, not Valentine's Day. A Sabbath of rest to the Lord. Whosoever doeth work therein shall be put to death. So, before we leave, then we will emphasize on this again. But on the 7th day there shall be to you an holy day. Sabbath, that's an example of one of them. And we see what goes on in your resting in the knowledge of God. So, leaving verse 3, then we will hit verse 4 of Leviticus chapter 23. So now we have another topic. The feast of the Lord, holy convocations. So these other set apart ceremonies, these assemblies, which you shall proclaim. So he's given us a commandment, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. Make public notice when they come around during their times of the year. So we'll look at another one. In the 14th day of the first month, at even, the Lord's Passover. So this is another one of his days. Remember in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 2, speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, these, the feast of the Lord, these are my feasts. Passover, then it's another one, which we're going to run some precepts and look at this Passover. So we're still in the book of Exodus, and we will go to chapter 12 and pick it up at verse 21 through 23. Then Moses called, actually, let me highlight this first before I read. Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, so draw out and take you a lamb according to your families and kill the Passover. So that Passover, spiritually speaking, that's your flesh. Then you're killing your flesh, you're passing over to Christ. So you're passing over from flesh to spirit, from wickedness to righteousness, and you're passing over to Christ. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop, so gotta know what that hyssop is, and dip it in the life that is in the basin, and strike the lintel in the 2 side posts with the blood that is in the basin. So this lintel and the 2 posts, this outer part of this house, which spiritually speaking, that house, that's you. So you're covering that flesh with the life that is in the basin. And remember that this blood that was in the basin, there's hyssop in it. And none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. So you endure all the way to the end. And once then you pass over to Christ and you remain in that house, then you don't come back out. You endure all the way to the end. For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians. And when he seeth the blood upon the lintel, so that life, and on the 2 side posts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. Reason why? Because you're redeemed through that life, which we're getting ready to see that later in Colossians. So what we're going to do is we'll also go to chapter 13 and 14. And the life shall be to you for a token upon the houses where you are. And when I see the life, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you, when I smite the land of confusion, Babylon. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial. So that's another one of his days for us to have in our remembrance. And you shall keep it a feast. There it is. This is one of his feast days. To the Lord throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by ordinance forever. This is one of these feast days that he's ordained. So you're taking this blood that was dipped in this hyssop and you're striking the outer parts of your house. Then you're covering yourself with his life. Then that's your redemption. You're crossing over from this flesh to the Spirit of God. So to help us understand this life more that's being put on the doors and on the lintels, what we'll do is we will go to the book of Deuteronomy and we will go to chapter 6 and we will look at verse 6 and look at verse 9. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart. Verse 9. And thou shalt write them upon the post of thine house and on thine gates. So you just remember what we looked at in Exodus. And to build upon this, we will now head over to the New Testament and look at what Paul has to say for all of this. So we will look at 2 Corinthians and we will go to chapter 5 and look at verse 17. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. So you just remember that. Because then you've crossed over from that fleshly life. You've left that old man behind and put on that new man. So the old things are passed away because you've passed over. Remember, all things are become new. So now we'll go to 1 Corinthians and we will look at chapter 11 and we will look at 24 through 26. And when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, Take, learn, this is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. So that unleavened bread. After the same manner, he took the cup when he had supped, saying, This cup is a New Testament in my blood, my life. This do ye, as often as you drink, learn it in remembrance of me. For as often as you learn this bread and learn and drink this cup, you do show the Lord's death till he come. And our next precept is we will go to the book of Colossians and we will look at chapter 1 verse 14. In whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins. And this is what you have to go back and plug in with what we've seen in Exodus. That's that redemption, that life. And we will look at also verse 21 through 23. And you that were sometimes alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now has he reconciled. So he took you out of Egypt with his life in the blood of his flesh through death to present you holy and unblameable and unreprovable in his sight, if you continue in the faith, grounded and settled. This is why back in Exodus, after you've taken that blood and you've strike the door and the lintels, then you stay in the house till the morning, then you don't come back out. And be not moved away from the hope of the gospel, which you have heard, and which was preached to every creature which is under heaven. And that's a semicolon, so that's a full thought. So these things we have to keep in mind about the Passover. And all of those things you're doing, and it's in remembrance of Christ. So you see the contrast between the Lord's and his feast and the feast of the world. So what we'll do is now we will hit verse 6. So now we have another feast. So now we're at verse 6. And on the 15th day of the same month, the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. Which right here, then he's taken ownership again. Then he's the agency behind this feast of unleavened bread. It says the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord, Spirit of God. 7 days you must learn unleavened bread. And in the first day you shall have an holy convocation. So here's a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein, but you shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord 7 days. So you present your body as a living sacrifice, that offering that's you. And in the 7th day is an holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. So we're going to get back into this e-Bible, and we'll look at some precepts about this feast of unleavened bread and look at this spiritually. So we're in the book of Exodus, and we will go to chapter 12, and we will pick it up at verse 15 and go down to 20. So 7 days you shall learn unleavened bread. So we're learning this bread of a truth. The first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. So you purged out this malice and this wickedness. For whosoever learneth leavened bread, so this wickedness, from the first day unto the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Because once again, during this celebration, this feast day, then you are presenting your body as a living sacrifice. Then it's about the purification of your tabernacle. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation, and in the 7th day there shall be an holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat. That only may be done of you. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. For in this selfsame day, reason why I brought your armies out of the land of confusion. Therefore, for that reason shall you observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. So in the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, you shall learn unleavened bread. So not knowledge that has malice and wickedness in it, and it's knowledge of sincerity and truth. Until the 21st day, 20th day of the month at even. So 7 days shall there be no leaven, so no malice or wickedness found in your houses. For whosoever learneth that which is leaven, that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. So he's repeating himself again. You shall learn nothing leaven, so nothing with malice and wickedness. In all your habitations shall you learn unleavened bread. And he told us the reason why. Then we're doing this because this was that self-same day that he brought us out of confusion. And since he brought us out of confusion, there's no reason to run back and learn that leavened bread again. So what we'll do is we will now go to 1 Corinthians, and we will go to chapter 5, and we will look at 7 and 8. So we've seen how these holidays that he's ordained, how they go down. Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as you are unleavened. For even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. Therefore let us keep the feast. So of learning, of eating that supper, not with old leaven. So you're not learning the same old stuff that he took us out of. Neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. So this is what you're doing spiritually with that feast of unleavened bread. Then you're learning the knowledge of the Creator those 7 days. So what we'll also do is we will look at the book of Job, and we will go to chapter 11, verse 14. If iniquity be in thine hand, so in your power, put it far away, and let not wickedness dwell in thy tabernacles. So these are the things that we have to look at when you're looking at that feast of unleavened bread. So the next thing that we'll look at is we will also look at verse 33 of Leviticus. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, so speak unto the children of Israel. So there's another commandment, saying, the 15th day of the 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles. So the feast of this purification of the temple. For 7 days unto the Spirit of God. So he's the recipient and the agency behind this feast day. Just got to remember what we looked at in the beginning of Leviticus chapter 23. So these are my feasts. So right here, then he's taking ownership of this. The 15th day of the 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto who? The Spirit of God. And we'll pick it up some more with verse 35. So on the first day shall be an holy convocation. So you shall do no servile work therein. In 7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire. So you just remember what we've seen in Romans chapter 12 verse 1. Unto the Spirit of God. And on the 8th day shall be an holy convocation unto you. And you shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Spirit of God. It is a solemn assembly. So this is one of his feast days, and one of his holy convocations. And you shall do no servile work therein. So you already see how his feast days are differing. And just to put that in our remembrance, then what we'll do is we will go to Amos, and we will go back to chapter 5, verse 21. So Amos 5 and 21. I hate, so I despise your feast days, and I will not smell in your solemn assemblies. Because our feast days, and it's nothing like his feast days. Then ours is all vanity. So what we'll do is we will run another precept, and we will go to 1 Corinthians, and we will look at chapter 11, verse 20 through 21. So when you come together, therefore, and this is why he hates and despises our feast days. When you come together, therefore, into one place, this is not to learn the Lord's Supper. There's no learning going on during our carnal, sensual, natural, earthly feast days. So I'm going to say this again. When you come together, therefore, into one place, this is not to learn the Lord's Supper. For in learning, everyone taketh before other his own supper. So you're learning the knowledge and precepts and traditions of men. And one is hungry and another is drunken. So one is hungry because this knowledge, and it's not going to satisfy you. Another is drunken because there's darkness in that knowledge. It's going to cause you to stagger. So let's look also at verse 17. Now in this that I declare unto you, I praise you not, that you come together not for the better, and that's also with Halloween and Christmas, but for the worse. And for this reason, then we have to stay out of this. So we'll go to verse 37. So these are the feasts of the Lord, ones that we just went over, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations. to offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord, a burnt offering and a meat offering, so a knowledge offering, bread offering, which that's a sacrifice, and drink offerings, everything upon his day. And we'll pick up some more. Beside the Sabbaths of the Lord, so in addition to the Sabbaths of the Lord, and beside your gifts, and beside all your vows, and beside all your freewill offerings, which you give unto the Lord. So also in the 15th day of the 7th month, so there's some more that goes on with this feast. When you have gathered in the fruit of the land, so you've gathered the knowledge of the land, you shall keep a feast. So you see how these feasts and its knowledge and it's tying hand in hand. You shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. Then he's commanding us to keep this feast when we've gathered the knowledge of the land. So verse 40, and you shall take on the first day, the boughs of goodly trees, so the fruits of goodly trees, and this is all spiritual talk, branches of palm trees, and the boughs of thick trees, and willows of the brook. And this is all spiritual talk. And you shall rejoice before the Spirit of your God 7 days. And you shall keep it a feast unto the Lord 7 days in the year. It shall be a statute forever in your generations. So this is a mandate. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month. So what we're going to do is we'll look at some precepts. So we'll go first to Deuteronomy, and we'll look at chapter 6. I believe it was 16 and 13. We'll go there. If not, it's okay. So thou shalt observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days. After that thou hast gathered in thy corn and thine wine. And thou shalt rejoice in thy feast, thou and thy son, and thy daughter, and thy maidservant, and thy manservant, and thy maidservant, and the Levite, the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow that are within thy gates. So we're rejoicing in this knowledge. Another thing that we'll look at is we will go to the book of Nehemiah, and we will look at chapter 8 and verse 14 through 18. And they found written in the law, which the Lord had commanded by Moses, that the children of Israel shall dwell in booths in the feast of the 7th month, and that they shall publish, so make public notice, and proclaim in all their cities and in Jerusalem, saying, go forth unto the mount, so and fetched olive branches, so it's that spiritual talk, and pine branches, and myrtle branches, and palm branches, and branches of thick trees, to make booths, as it is written. So the people went forth and brought them, and made themselves booths, everyone upon the roof of his house, and in their courts, and in the courts of the house of God, and in the street of the water gate, and in the street of the gate of Ephraim. And all the congregation of them that were come again out of captivity, so out of this bondage of confusion, made booths, and sat under the booths. For since the day of Joshua the son of Nun, that day had not the children of Israel done so, and there was very great gladness because of these booths that they're creating from these branches. So this is all spiritual talk. Also, day by day, from the first day unto the last day of this feast, he read in the book of the law. So you see what's going on during these feast days. At least this one, namely and particularly. And they kept the feast 7 days, and on the 8th day was a solemn assembly, according unto the manner. So you see what's going on, reading the book of the law those 7 days. So what we'll do is we will now look at this last few verses. So, verse 42. So you shall dwell in booths 7 days. All that are Israelites born. So this is a topic. We just looked at a command. You shall dwell in booths 7 days. So all that are Israelites born shall dwell in booths. And this is the reason why. That your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. So I'm the Lord your God. And Moses declared unto the children of Israel the feasts of the Lord. So what we'll do is we'll just run a few more precepts for these booths. And what we'll do is we'll look at Sirach. And we will look at 51. And we will go to verse 21. So Sirach 51 and 21. And that was the wrong verse too. So it was actually 23, not 21. So actually it's Sirach chapter 51 verse 23. So draw near unto me, you unlearned, and dwell in the house of learning. So he's bringing us out of confusion so we can know the Spirit of God. We can have this knowledge, this wisdom, and this understanding. And the final verse that we'll look at is we will hit Isaiah, and we'll go to chapter 1, verse 3. So the ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib. But Israel do not know, my people do not consider. And this is why we have to dwell in those booths. So, that being said, then I'm getting ready to turn this over to Deacon Smith. Then I would bid you all a shalom and peace.
Thank you, Deacon Micah, for unveiling the tricks and the treats of Satan. Shalom. This is Deacon Smith, and my part of the teaching is going to be All Fools Day, Day of the Dead. And we're going to start off at Jeremiah 10, verse 1 through 2, verse 8, 10 through 13, and 15 through 16. Halloween is a celebration that us Black people, we do for no reason. We just see other people, nations do it, and we want to partake in it. But it's part of our demise, because we're worshiping another God, and we learning the ways of people that has nothing to do with God. We have our own thing, we have our own heritage, we have our own culture that we must learn and remember and turn to and follow, so that we can be guided and become Israel, the promised chosen people of God. Hear ye the word which the Spirit of God speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus says the Spirit of God, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, which is a festival, Halloween, which comes around every year at the signs of the heaven, the signs of the times. For the heathen are dismayed at them. They have a ball. These are the times that they get their glory. But they are altogether brutish and foolish. The stock is a doctrine of vanities. But the Spirit of God is the true God, so turn to him. He is the living God, so trust in him. An everlasting King. At his wrath the earth shall tremble, and the nations shall not be able to abide his indignation. Thus shall ye say unto them, the gods that have not made the heavens and the earth, even they shall perish from the earth and from under these heavens. He hath made the earth by his power, our God, our guide. He hath established the world by his wisdom. And we're going to be saved by that same wisdom if we hearken unto that wisdom. And hath stretched out the heavens by his discretion. When he uttereth his voice, there is a multitude of waters in the heavens, and he causeth the vapors to ascend from the ends of the earth. He maketh lightnings with rain, and bringeth forth the wind out of his treasures. This is his glory. They are vanity and the work of errors. Those people we learn from in this life, in this world of destruction. In the time of that visitation, they shall perish. The portion of Jacob, which is supposed to be us, is not like them, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance. The Spirit of God of hosts is his name. Deuteronomy chapter 32, 5 through 21, and 24, verse 24, 28 through 29 and 31. And this is what the Spirit of God, through the prophet, spoke to us to warn us. They have corrupted themselves. Their spot is not the spot of his children. They are a perverse and crooked generation. If we don't take heed and keep his commandments and do the fruit, how to provide the fruits of the Spirit. Do ye thus requite the Spirit of God, O foolish people and unwise? Is not he that Father that hath bought thee? Hath he not made thee and established thee? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee. Thy elders, and they will tell thee. When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. For the Spirit of God's portion of his people, for the Spirit of God's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. He found him in a desert land and in the waste howling wilderness where we are today. He led him about, he instructed him, he kept him as the apple of his eye. See that we are separated. We're supposed to be separated, and we're supposed to be found by the Spirit of God when we seek out him. As an eagle stirreth up her nest, fluttereth over her young, spreadeth abroad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on her wings. So that's our comfort and our protection. So the Spirit of God alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. So these things are not to be done because they wasn't done from the beginning when we were found. He made him ride on the high places of the earth, that he might eat the increase of the fields. And he made him to suck honey out of the rock and oil out of the flinty rock, butter of kine and milk of sheep with fat of lambs and rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats with the fat of kidneys of wheat. And thou didst drink the pure blood, the life of the grape. But Jezreel, Israel, waxed fat. We got high-minded and haughty, and kicked. Thou art waxen fat, thou art grown thick, thou art covered with fatness. Then he forsook Yahweh our God, which made him, and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvation. They provoked him to jealousy with strange gods, celebrating Halloween. With abominations provoked they him to anger. They sacrificed unto devils, not to Yahweh, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. Those Celtics, we worship in them. They sacrifice unto devils because we know Gentiles sacrifice unto devils. And we picking up their culture and we're doing the same thing, which is making us enemy of God. Of the rock that begot thee, thou art unmindful and hast forgotten Yahweh that formed thee. And when the Spirit of God saw it, he abhorred them, he hated them, because of the provoking of his sons and of his daughters. So there were some out there still trying to teach the lost sheeps to come back into the fold of righteousness of Christ under his wings. And he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end shall be. For they are a very forward generation, children in whom is no faith. They have moved me to jealousy with that which is not God, which is an idol. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities, and I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. That's why everybody's on top and we on the bottom. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. Verse 24, they shall be burnt with hunger and devoured with burning heat. And with bitter destruction, I will also send the teeth of beasts upon them with the poison of serpents of the dust. Man, that's cold, but we deserve it. For they are a nation void of counsel, neither is there any understanding in them. And that's why he got to do that. Oh, that they were wise, that they understood this, that they would consider their latter end. Verse 31, for their rock is not as our rock, because they don't believe and have faith in the Spirit of God. Even our enemies themselves being the teachers. Matthew chapter 7, 13 through 27. And the only way we can find that straight gate is through precepts and taking heed and discerning the signs of the times. Verse 13, enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, those costumes, to deceive you. But inwardly they are ravening wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruits, the fruits of the flesh. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs or thistles? Even so every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, fruits of the Spirit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore, by their fruits you shall know them. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. So Only those that's keeping precepts diligently and seeking them out and worshiping them in spirit and truth will come will come to the Father. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils? Satan can't cast out Satan. And in thy name done many wonderful works. And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Because all you just gave them was lip service. And he's not looking for that. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock, the truth. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And those rains descending is the doctrines, and the floods of men that come to overwhelm us and carry us off from the truth. And the winds blew. The winds are the spirits that they conjure up, or they think they conjuring up during these festivals of hell, Halloween and Christmas. And everyone that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell. So you're going to fall for all those deceptions and those things of the world. And great was the fall of it. 1 Samuel chapter 15, 22 through 23. And most people don't know that when you're doing Halloween, you're doing a sacrifice to devils. And God don't even want to sacrifice unto him. So you know you're in trouble. And Samuel said, hath the Spirit of God as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Spirit of God? Behold, remember to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. For rebellion, not listening, and speaking bad about Christ is as the sin of witchcraft, and the stubbornness is as iniquity, acts of sin and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Spirit of God, he hath also rejected thee from being king. Genesis chapter 4, 6 through 7. And just like when you go and try to tell people the truth and they not listening, and at the end, they gonna find out the same thing Cain found out. And the Spirit of God said unto Cain, why art thou wroth? And why is thou countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? Because they're not going to be accepted. He's going to thrust you out. And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. And that one was lying at the door, just like a dead dog. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. And that's why you participating in Halloween, and you doing all these things that the world do, because they ruling over you. Susanna, chapter 1, 52 through 53. Nothing is hidden from God. His eyes are upon us at all times. Verse 52. So when they were put asunder, they were split apart, one from another, he called one of them and said unto him, O thou that art waxen old in wickedness, thou now thy sins which thou hast committed aforetime are come to light. For thou hast pronounced false judgment and hast condemned the innocent and hast let the guilty go free. Albeit the Creator saith, the innocent and righteous shall thou not slay, because he vengeance is the Lord's. And he gonna take care of it. He gonna give us our recompense at the end. Psalms 102, verse 26. They shall perish, all those that's indulging in Satan's activities on this world, in deceptions. They shall perish, but thou shalt endure. We got to endure to the end. Yea, all of them shall wax old like a garment. As a vesture shalt thou change them, and they shall be changed. Galatians 5, 16 through 23. And just like you go walking around on Halloween from door to door, begging for candy, this I say then, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that you would. But if you be led of the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, which you do during Halloween; fornication, spiritual and carnal fornication. People go out to Hollywood and they do all crazy things on Halloween. Dress up, men dress up as women, women dress up as men, and they go out fornicating on the streets of Hollywood. Uncleanness, lasciviousness, all this is done in those streets. Idolatry. Hollywood is idolatry. Witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders. Many people get killed on Halloween from drunk drivers, and you send your kids out to walk in the streets at night. What sense does that make? A fool's day. Drunkenness, revelings, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in times past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. So you doing Halloween, you need the law, because the law was made for unrighteous men, and you doing unrighteous things by partaking in Halloween. Isaiah chapter 2, 5 through 9 and 12. O house of Jacob, come ye and let us walk in the light of the Spirit of God. Therefore thou hast forsaken thy people. Therefore thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because we not walking in his light. We forsake him, so he forsaken us. Because they be replenished from the east and are soothsayers like the Philistines, and they please themselves in the children of strangers. Their land also is full of silver and gold, neither is there any end of their treasures. Their land is also full of horses, neither is there any end of their chariots. Their land also is full of idols. They worship the work of their own hands, that which their own fingers have made. And the mean man boweth down, and the great man humbleth himself. Therefore forgive them not. For the day of the Spirit of God of hosts shall be upon everyone that is proud and lofty, and upon everyone that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. The day of a fool's day. Ecclesiasticus chapter 33, 24 through 26, 27, and 29. Fodder, a wine, and burdens are for the ass, because you acting like one. And bread, correction, and work for a servant. A yoke and a collar do bow the neck, so are tortures and torments for an evil servant. Send him to labor, that he be not idle, for idleness teacheth much evil. Verse 29. But be not excessive toward any, and without discretion do nothing. So we always must have wisdom with us. Isaiah chapter 1, 3 through 4, 7, 10, and 14 through 16. The ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib. But Israel doth not know, my people doth not consider. A sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, acts of sin, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters. They have forsaken the Spirit of God. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel unto anger. They are gone away backward. That's why we can never progress, because we walking backwards in the wilderness instead of walking forwards to the promise. Verse 7, your country is desolate. Your cities are burnt with fire. Your land, strangers devour it in your presence, and it is desolate as overthrown by strangers. Verse 10, hear the word of the Spirit of God, ye rulers of Sodom. Give ear unto the law of our God, ye people of Gomorrah. Verse 14, your new moons and your appointed feasts my soul hateth. They are a trouble unto me. I am weary to bear them. And when ye spread forth your hands, I will hide mine eyes from you. Yea, when ye make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood, full of sin. Wash you, make you clean. Put away the evil of your doings from before mine eyes. Cease to do evil. Deuteronomy 18, 9 through 12, and 14. We got to pound it on you. When thou art come into the land which the Spirit of God thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Spirit of God. And because of these abominations, the Spirit of God, thy God, doth drive them out from before thee. So that's why we was driven out from before him also, and we scattered among them, because we did the same thing and they did. For these nations which thou shalt possess hearkened unto observers of times and unto diviners. But as for thee, the Spirit of God, thy God, hath not suffered thee so to do. So don't do it. Ezekiel chapter 16, 49 through 50. Behold, remember, this was the iniquity of acts of sin of thy sister Sodom. Pride, fullness of bread, and abundance of idleness was in her and in her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. And they were haughty and committed abominations before me. Therefore I took them away as I saw good. Psalm 16 and 4. Their sorrows shall be multiplied that hasten after another God. Their drink offerings of blood, life of sin will I not offer, nor take up their names into my lips. Ecclesiasticus chapter 23, 16 through 19. Two sorts of men multiply sin, and the third will bring wrath. A hot mind is as a burning fire. It will never be quenched till it be consumed. A fornicator in the body of his flesh will never cease till he hath kindled a fire. All bread is sweet to a whoremonger. He will not leave off till he die. A man that breaketh wedlock sang thus in his heart, who see me? I am compassed about with darkness. The walls cover me, and nobody seeth me. What need I to fear? The Most High will not remember my sins. Such a man only feareth the eyes of men, and knoweth not that the eyes of the Lord are 10,000 times brighter than the sun, beholding all the ways of men and considering the most secret parts. 1 Samuel chapter 28, verse 8, 15 through 25. And Saul was doing evil as a king of Israel, and God sent him chastisement through the Philistines to overtake him. And he was afraid because every time he made a prayer to Yahweh, Yahweh wouldn't answer him. And so Saul leaned upon his own understanding and made haste to go after another god. And Saul disguised himself and put on another raiment, that costume, and he went, and two men with him. They was trick-or-treating. And they came to the woman by night, and he said, I pray thee, give me a gift, that piece of candy, divine unto me by the familiar spirit, and bring me him up. whom I shall name unto thee. And Samuel said to Saul, verse 15, because that's who he called. He called upon Samuel. And Samuel said to Saul, why hast thou disquieted me? Because Samuel was in rest in the Lord, because his work was finished, to bring me up. And Saul answered, I am sore distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God is departed from me, and answereth me no more, neither by prophets nor by dreams. Therefore I have called thee, that thou mayest make known unto me what I shall do. Then said Samuel, wherefore then dost thou ask of me, seeing the Spirit of God is departed from thee, and is become thine enemy? And the Spirit of God hath done to him as he spake by me. For the Spirit of God hath rent the kingdom out of thine hand, and given it to thy neighbor, even to David, his beloved, because thou obeyest not the voice of the Spirit of God, nor executed his fierce wrath upon Amalek. Therefore hath the Spirit of God done this thing unto thee this day. Moreover, the Spirit of God will also deliver Israel with thee into the hand of the Philistines. And tomorrow shalt thou and thy sons be with me, dead. The Spirit of God also shall deliver the host of Israel into the hands of the Philistines. Then Saul fell straightway all alone on the earth, and was sore afraid because of the words of Samuel, and there was no strength in him, because he didn't have the Spirit. Spirit is our strength. For he had eaten no bread all the day, nor all the night. And the woman came unto Saul, and saw that he was sore troubled, and said unto him, behold, remember thine handmaid hath obeyed thy voice, and I have put my life in my hand, and have hearkened unto thy words which thou spakest unto me. Here come the trick. Now therefore I pray thee, hearken thou also unto the voice of thine handmaid, and let me set a morsel of bread before thee, and eat, that thou mayest have strength when thou goest on thy way. But he refused and said, I will not eat. But his servants together with the women compelled him. So he was weak in faith, and he hearkened unto their voice. So he arose from the earth and sat upon the bed. And the woman had a fat calf in the house. There go that calf again. And she hasted and killed it, and took flour and kneaded it, and did bake unleavened bread thereof. And she brought it before Saul and before his servants, and they did eat. Then they rose up and went away that night. Proverbs chapter 7, 9 through 27. And this is what happens when you go trick-or-treating and celebrating Halloween. In the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night, and behold, remember, there met him a woman with the attire of an harlot and subtle of heart. She is loud and stubborn. Her feet abide not in her house. Now is she without, now in the streets, and lieth in wait at every corner. So she caught him and kissed him, and with the impudent face said unto him, I have peace offerings with me. This day have I paid my vows. Therefore came I forth to meet thee, diligently to seek thy face, and I have found thee. I have decked my bed with coverings of tapestry, with carved works, with fine linen of confusion, Egypt. I have performed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love into the morning. Let us solace ourselves with loves. For the good man is not at home. He is gone a long journey. He hath taken a bag of money with him, and will come home at the day appointed, With her much fair speech, she caused him to yield. With the flattering of her lips, she forced him. He goeth after her straightway as an ox goeth to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till a dart strike through his liver, as a bird hasted to the snare, and knoweth not that it is for his life. Hearken unto me now, therefore, O you children, and attend to the words of my mouth. Let not thy heart decline to her ways. Go not astray in her paths. For she hath cast down many wounded. Yea, many strong men have been slain by her. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. Isaiah chapter 1, 24 through 28. Therefore, says the Creator, the Spirit of God of hosts, the mighty one of Israel, I will ease me of mine adversaries, and avenge me of mine enemies, and I will turn my hand upon thee, and purely purge away thy dross, and take away all thy tin. And I will restore thy judges as at the first, and thy counselors as at the beginning. Afterwards thou shalt be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. Zion shall be redeemed with judgment, and her converts with righteousness. And the destruction of the transgressors and of the sinners shall be together, and they that forsake the Spirit of God shall be consumed. Proverbs chapter 16, 25 through 26, 29, and 33. Don't be deceived and don't be fooled. And don't lean to your own understanding. Always use precepts. There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. He that laboreth for himself, for his mouth craveth it of him. A violent man enticeth his neighbor, and leadeth him into the way that is not good. Verse 33, the lot is cast into the lap, but the whole disposing thereof is of the Spirit of God. So it's in your hands. He gave you the power to cast it down or to hide it in your heart. But the disposing of it is of the Spirit of God. He the one that's gonna take it from you, because you gave it away. Proverbs 22 and 14. The mouth of strange women is a deep pit. The mouth of a strange woman is a deep pit. He that is abhorred of the Spirit of God shall fall therein. Just like he loved those that love him, he also hate those that hate him. Ecclesiasticus 35 and 3. He hate the sin as well as the sinner. To depart from wickedness is a thing pleasing to the Creator, and to forsake unrighteousness is a propitiation. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 18, 20 through 23. Yea, the tasting of death, when you eat that candy, Halloween candy, touched the righteous also. And there was a destruction of the multitude in the wilderness, but the wrath endured not long. Satan has deceived the whole world, but it's all up to us to find that righteous path and forsake the evil and learn the good. But then the blameless man made haste and stood forth to defend them, and bringing the shield of his proper ministry, even prayer and the propitiation of incense, set himself against the wrath, and so brought the calamity to an end, declaring that he was thy servant. So he overcame the destroyer, not with strength of body, nor force of arms, but with a word subdued him that punished, alleging the oaths and covenants made with the fathers. For when the dead were now falling down by heaps one upon another, standing between, he stayed the wrath and parted the way to the living. Genesis 8:20-21. He parted the way to the living. Sorry. And Noah builded an altar unto the Spirit of God, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Spirit of God smelled a sweet savor, and the Spirit of God said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. Psalms 34:7-14. The angel of the Spirit of God, the angel of the Creator encamped around about them that feared him and delivered them. O taste and see that the Spirit of God is good. Blessed is the man that trusteth in him. O fear the Spirit of God, ye his saints, for there is no want to them that fear him. The young lions do lack and suffer hunger, but they that seek the Spirit of God shall not want any good thing. Come ye children, hearken unto me. I will teach you the fear of the Spirit of God. What man is he that desireth life and loveth many days, that he may see good? And we know that the only good thing is God. Keep thy tongue from evil and thy lips from speaking guile. Depart from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. So instead of Halloween dressing up as evil things and deceitful characters and making our image in the likeness of hell, we must seek the Spirit of God for his teachings and doctrines, for the blessings. 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. So when we become grown, a man in Christ, a new man in Christ, then we must teach our children diligently these things so they won't fall unto the wiles of the devils in this deception of Halloween, thinking it's a good thing when it's not good at all. It's evil and wicked and hatred towards God. Genesis, I'm sorry, Songs of Solomon, chapter 4 and 11. And instead of that sweet candy that's gonna rotten us, we must look for this. Thy lips, O my spouse, drop as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under thy tongue, and the smell of thy garments is like the smell of Lebanon. Genesis 35, 1 through 5. We must flee from this world and come into our own. Christ is waiting for us. He is our sanctuary, and we must be his temple so he can dwell in us and we can dwell in him. And God said unto Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there, and make there an altar unto Yahweh that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. Then Jacob said unto his household and to all that were with him, put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean, and change your garments, those filthy rags. And let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto Yahweh, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went. And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears. And Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. They was protected. They was gathered like unto Christ. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, 11 through 18. O ye Corinthians, our mouth is open unto you. Our heart is enlarged. Ye are not straitened in us, but ye are straitened in your own bowels. Now for a recompense in the same, I speak as unto my children. Be ye also enlarged. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? And what concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For you are the temple of the living God, as God has said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, says the Creator, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you, and will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, says the salvation Creator Almighty. 2 Chronicles 30, 33 through 1 through 8. And this is how we fell off being as children of perdition. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem, but did that which was evil in the sight of the Spirit of God, like unto the abominations of the heathen, whom the Spirit of God had cast out before the children of Israel. For he built again the high places which Ezekiel his father had broken down, and he reared up altars for Balaam, and made groves, and worshipped all the hosts of heaven, and served them. Also he built altars in the house of the Spirit of God, whereof the Spirit of God has said, in Jerusalem shall my name be forever. And he built altars for all the hosts of heaven in the two courts of the house of the Spirit of God. And he caused his children to pass through the fire in the valley of the son of Hinnom. Also he observed times, and used enchantments, and used witchcraft, and dealt with a familiar spirit, and with wizards. He wrought much evil in the sight of the Spirit of God, to provoke him to anger. And he set a carved image, that pumpkin, the idol which he had made in the house of Yahweh, of which our God has said to David and to Solomon his son, in this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen before all the tribes of Israel, will I put my name forever. Neither will I any more remove the foot of Israel from out of the land which I have appointed for your fathers, so that they will take heed to do all that I have commanded them, according to the whole law and the statutes and ordinance by the hand of Moses. And since he made that promise to us, and we couldn't keep our side of the promise, he had to cast us out. We had to endure those curses. Romans 9, 6 through 8. Not as though the word of God had taken none effect, for they are not all Israel which are of Israel, neither because they are the seed of Abraham are they all children, but in Isaac shall thy seed be called. That is, they which are the children of the flesh. These are not the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted for the seed. So if you're doing fleshly works, you're not none of his. Doing Halloween. Luke 13, 28 through 35. And I wonder if they read this in a Christian church. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth when ye shall see Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, and ye yourselves thrust out. And they shall come from the east and from the west and from the north and from the south, and shall sit down in the kingdom of Yahweh. And behold, remember, there are last which shall be first, and there are first which shall be last. Because in the Christian church, they always teach in prosperity that they want to be first now, but we must endure so we can be last now and first in the kingdom. The same day there came certain of the Pharisees, saying unto him, Get thee out and depart hence, for Herod will kill thee. And he said unto them, Go ye and tell that fox, Behold, I cast out devils, and I do cures today and tomorrow, and the third day I shall be perfected. So his work wasn't done, so he don't fear no man. And his work wasn't done, so he got to keep striving and endure. Nevertheless, I must walk today and to tomorrow and the day following, for it cannot be that a prophet perish out of Jerusalem. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which killeth the prophets and stonest them that are sent unto thee. How often would I have gathered thy children together as a hen doth gather her brood under her wings, and ye would not. So you see, he ain't talking about gathering the whole world. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate, and verily I say unto you, ye shall not see me until the time come when ye shall say, blessed, knowledge and understanding is given that cometh in the name of the Creator. Jeremiah 23, 9 through 10, 12 through 12 and 14, and 18 through 20. Mine heart within me is broken because of the prophets. All my bones shake. I am like a drunken man, and like a man whom wine hath overcome, because of the Spirit of God, and because of the words of his holiness. For the land is full of adulterers, for because of swearing the land mourneth. The pleasant places of the wilderness are dried up, and their course is evil, and their force is not right. Wherefore their ways shall be unto them as slippery ways in the darkness, and they shall be driven on and fall therein. For I will bring evil upon them, even the year of their visitation, says the Spirit of God. I have seen also in the prophets of Jerusalem an horrible thing. They commit adultery and walk in lies. They strengthen also the hands of evildoers, that none doth return from his wickedness. They are all of them unto me as Sodom, and the inhabitants thereof as Gomorrah. Verse 18. For who hath stood in the counsel of the Spirit of God, and hath perceived and heard his word? Who hath marked his word and heard it? Behold, a whirlwind of the Spirit of God is gone forth in fury. Even a grievous whirlwind, it shall fall grievously upon the head of the wicked. The anger of the Spirit of God shall not return until he have executed, until he have performed the thoughts of his heart. In the latter days you shall consider it perfectly. Proverbs chapter 22, 6, 11, 15, 17 through 21, and 23 through 25. We start at 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Verse 11. He that loveth pureness of heart, for the grace of his lips, the king shall be his friend. Verse 15. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. Verse 17 and 18. Verse 17 through 21. Bow down thine ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply thine heart unto my knowledge. For it is a pleasant thing if thou keep them within thee. They shall withal be fitted in thy lips, that thy trust may be in the Spirit of God. I have made known to thee this day, even to thee. Have not I written to thee excellent things and counsels and knowledge, that I might make thee know the certainty of the words of truth, that thou mightest answer the words of truth to them that send unto thee? Verse 23 through 25. For the Spirit of God will plead their cause and spoil the soul of those that spoil them. Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, 1 through 2, 4 through 11, 14 through 15, verse 19, and 21 through 24. But of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Creator so cometh as a thief in the night. Verse 4 through 11. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. You are all the children of light and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep, as do others, but let us watch and be sober. For they that sleep, sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the night. But let us, who are of the day, be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and for an helmet, the hope of salvation. For Yahweh hath not appointed us to wrath, but to obtain salvation by our Creator, salvation the Anointed One, who died for us, that whether we wake or sleep, we should live together with him. Wherefore comfort yourselves together and edify one another, even as also ye do. Verse 14. Now we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded, support the weak, be patient toward all men. Verse 15. See that none render evil for evil unto any man, but ever follow that which is good, both among yourselves and to all men. Verse 19. Quench not the spirit. Verse 21 through 24. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good, abstain from all appearance of evil. And the very God, Yahweh, our guide of peace, sanctify you wholly. And I pray, our guide, Yahweh, your whole spirit and soul and body be preserved blameless unto the coming of our Creator, salvation, anointed one. Faithful is he that calleth you, who also will do it. And that's the end of this teaching about Halloween and the tricks and the treats of Satan.